Well, hello there. It's been a little while, and I'm not going to apologize for my time off. I enjoyed it so much. Being on a boat, not so much alone and a little bit alone, great stuff. Especially the fact that I visited a new place, new lake, met some new people over there. Really amazing as well. I mean, definitely when you start putting effort on your own good vibe, things do happen, and it's really good. Now, before I actually left to take some time off for myself, there was a response here on YouTube from one of the self-proclaimed, I would say, probably they might have a double PhD in psychology and cognitive behavioral psychology, or an expert in the cognitive behavior. So, having said that, the person said, yeah, screenshot the comments and use it. I'm not actually going to, well, I didn't do that, and I'm not going to, and I'm not actually responding to that person alone in particular. But the point is, the problem with these so-called experts these days, and the people who have massive prejudice about the drugs and people who use drugs, and then let's say drug abusers or addicts. Where's the issue? Well, for the main part, just yesterday I was watching a clip from the Joe Rogan show, where he was discussing the use of psychedelics in the history, and then also in the therapy and modern day and age, and then hippie era and so forth. Personally, I have now certain level of experience with the psychedelics, and yes, indeed, the prejudice and the stigma around the use of drugs, or I don't know, medicine, is really useless for the people, and useless for these so-called experts, because they really act like as if they know something, but it's super clear that they either lack the experience or that they have an extreme bias themselves towards towards a large spectrum of what we call the drugs. Because what are the drugs? It's caffeine or coffee, which is also the same chemical compound is in the tea. It's caffeine. Thein and caffeine are exactly the same, but the point in the tea, that the tea itself is like that it releases much slower, and because of the tea itself, it's not so toxic as the coffee itself. Never mind. Then you have alcohol. Then you have a bunch of obviously medical drugs, for antidepressants, anxiety drugs, psychosis, so forth. Then schizophrenia. All of these things are treated with, medicine, as they call it, or drugs as well. But the point what I'm trying to make, these are drugs more or less either based on the opiates or other, like diazepam is an opiate. Then you have benzoates and all this kind of stuff. And then you have all sorts of different things, like let's say you have cannabis, which is a herb. Then you have psilocybin, which are basically mushrooms. And then you have LSD, which at the end of the day is just, it is still a chemical compound, but it's based on, I think it's mold or fungus that grows on a specific grain and stuff like that. So, I mean, all of these things are a large spectrum of drugs. And then you also have the DMT, which I can't really properly pronounce what it is. But the DMT itself is a natural substance that our body produces pretty much on a daily basis, because that's how we dream. And but it's also massively produced when we're born and when we die. This is like a really huge dosage release being there. But DMT can also be ingested by humans in many different forms. It can be smoked, it can be even injected, it can be vaporized, or drank as a tea. Like many people will know that as an ayahuasca, which is kind of like a brew mix, herbal mix of and brewed like a tea, and then drank by the shamans in South Americas, for example. And then let's say when we look at the history, the use of psychedelics is really well known in the Egyptian culture, even the Christian culture itself. If you look at the Vatican, there is a building where they have a pine cone in front of the building. And the representation for that pine cone is actually about the pineal gland, or what people call the third eye. Yeah. And I really liked the clip from Joe Rogan, where he's basically saying that from the neuroscientific perspective, when we observe people in the neuroscientific lab, when we measure their brain waves and observe the brain patterns during the use of these psychedelics and the use of certain drugs, we can see what kind of neurons are being fired, which parts of the brain and stuff. So, for example, in the use of psychedelics, you can see that there's centers for speech, visualization, creativity, and all these kind of things. So, large part of what we now see as the human civilization is probably, most likely, created and exists because in the past animals and humans have been using drugs, and it creates a changed and altered state of awareness. And many things that are happening in our daily lives, the things that we observe, like trees around me and the clouds and all these things, are based on very simple mathematics, which we call sacred geometry, or it's called sacred geometry, but it's not about now the sacred. The point why it's being called the sacred is because, simple as that, is like these are the patterns that are naturally occurring, like the number pi, and then you have the golden ratio, and all of these things these are the patterns and the spirals and all these things that are certain rules that everything appears in the nature. So like every branch has like spreads in 3 or 5 or 7, and then the leaves and the flower petals and stuff has certain mathematical rule to how things are going on in the universe and nature and everything. And when I experimented or took the psychedelics to also find my deeper stuck up emotions, so basically I used them for therapy, it would be way more advised to do this under supervision and not the way I did it, totally alone and quite inexperienced. But either way, let's say I was just lucky I got out of it with no harm done, and it's not physically harmful, but you should not experiment with these things alone. You shouldn't do things like that, any kind of drug and any kind of experiments like that, without someone who is already really experienced with that stuff and also understands a lot about psychology and neuroscience, so that you have a guided and very safe experience. That's really, really important, because it can get very unsafe just due to the fact that you might do or react in a way where you can hurt yourself. That's the problem with it. Drugs themselves are not really so harmful as the way it is how you use them, how much you use, in what kind of environment, with what kind of people, and with what kind of intention. That is also very important. So this is about the use of drugs. And what is the addiction? Where are the problems when people start using drugs to, in a sense, try to escape reality? So when I used the psychedelics, I did not escape the reality, but I expanded my perception and the perspective of it. I'm still the same person. I like to be sober, and I like to do things sober, and I like to live a sober life. But the whole point is, certain things help. Let's say the use of cannabis for me helps with my ADHD brain, which is part of the complex trauma symptoms. It helps with my tinnitus in my ears, and it definitely helps me stay calmer and more zoned in into and focused into the things I want to do. So the downside of it is just the smoking habit itself, because I started as younger. I started smoking weed, and it was mixed with tobacco. I became addicted to the tobacco and the nicotine. That's the addiction part. Same way, for example, I'm addicted to the caffeine. Not so hard that I have any withdrawal symptoms with caffeine, but I just find myself way more productive and balanced, and my day gets better and smoother if I drink my 3 to 4 cups of coffee during the day. And I always have also specific ritual, and also the rule that I don't drink coffee with sugar nor milk. So basically I drink coffee just black, and always try to get it freshly grounded. So if I cannot do it myself, I'm going to go to a coffee bar and pay more money for a good coffee rather than going to a cheap freaking petrol station and drink shit, which is not coffee. So Having said that, addicts are created by the fact that there is a pattern, psychological pattern. Addictive behavior is caused by traumatic experiences and so forth and so forth. That's pretty much now known. And how, based on all the data that already exists from the Vietnam and post-Vietnam era, when people were coming back to the United States, because Vietnam was known that a lot of soldiers in Vietnam were using heroin on a regular daily basis and quite hard doses. Not just the heroin, it was also methamphetamine and LSD and also all sorts of other drugs, because at the end of the day, the CIA experimented on soldiers and even the civil population in those days a lot, just so they were able to find out how to shut down the hippie movements and such, because they were obviously a danger to the structures of the system. And then from there on, the whole suppression of drugs and classification, or classifying them all as equally dangerous and the same, was where it happened. It was in the 70s and 80s. So from there on, you can also see the change, how it went, like design in the industry and architecture and everything became, from this beautiful futuristic, very artistic, it became just empty, shallow, ugly and meaningless. So the 90s music and the culture and stuff, except for like alternative parts, most of it, and 80s in particular, was complete rubbish. Most, not saying all, but it was very different compared to 60s and the 70s. So there's that part where you see this breakdown of society, where suddenly people became more disconnected, more individualized, less organized, and much less holistic. So everything became more compartmentalized, divided, separated, and split apart. So basically, if you look at it this way, like all of us are acting a bit like split personalities in a sense, or bipolar. And that is because this is by design. So the addiction, as proven in the history, is not because it's caused by the drug. The addictive patterns and addictive personality disorders are actually created by the lack of social interactions, by the lack of human touch, by the lack of safe environment for our emotional expressions, for our creative expressions. And why I'm saying this, because in the past 3 days now I've spent, after boating around, I've spent it with the friends I've met recently on one of these psytrance rave parties, because, you know, the music itself is really good. The use of psychedelics, smaller amounts of psychedelics at these parties is really, for me, therapeutic, because it relaxes me. I love to dance, and I dance more, and I really enjoy myself. So I met people who are from different walks of life, artists, scientists, like physics professor, doctors of physics and mathematics and all this kind of stuff. And just recently also a person who works pretty much since her early age, so like really early, with people in like social, like as a social worker or a therapist in many different environments, where it's like basically either people who have disabilities or people who are labeled, who are basically diagnosed schizophrenics, psychopaths, and all these kind of things, which are really people who are dangerous to themselves and to others, and they really need medicine to be able to cope with themselves and to cope with who they are and what they were either born like or what the trauma made them. Like, for example, you have children soldiers from Somalia and kids and stuff like that who have been through unbelievable terror. And there is no way that this person can do it alone. But it's not all just the drugs that actually help. What helps is that they have a person there next to them that can share the hug, that can share the space, that can share that compassion and kindness and all of these things. And that's why it's also so important in all these professions where people act like, let's say, which is exactly in these healing professions, whether it's a psychotherapy, whether it's just couples therapy, or whether it's serving others, like patients who are with serious mental health issues or just health issues and stuff. And people are acting just like a job, totally without compassion and lacking this human approach and stuff, of course, then anyone who is suffering either from physical pain or psychological pain is going to try to replace that lack of what we get from a simple hug and the healing effect of the oxytocin itself. You're going to try automatically to try and replace that with whatever next comes first and will, at least on the surface, seemingly affect you, your mind, in a way that it helps you relax and release the pain or forget about it. And this is the point. We are forgetting how important it is to stay healthy in a sense that you have, and healthy food, healthy people around yourself, healthy relationship with yourself and your body. So you don't have to freaking be a Hulk, but it's really important to stay active enough. Like maybe just walk a couple kilometers a day, go bicycle a little bit every day. I don't know, I don't like swimming, but I still occasionally take an opportunity to swim at least 50 to 100 meters so that I do something out of my bloody comfort zone as well, physically, not just by experimenting with other things. And the number one problem with people who have a prejudice about drug users, not the abusers and the addicts, and also being prejudiced about people who are suffering with addiction, people who are judgmental and constantly dishing out unsolicited advice and their own self-proclaimed diagnosis onto others just because they see me either smoking a joint or drinking a cup of coffee or things like that. Hey, guys, take a fucking chill pill yourselves, okay? Because you do not know what you're actually talking about, that's one. Second of all, if you're doing things only to feed people what you think is right and what you think others should be doing, you cannot call yourself a professional and you can not call yourself a human fucking being. Simple as that. You're a simple robot copying bloody text and headlines of things that you've learned in your life, but you have no proper personal knowledge and experience with it, because you need both of them together. It's not just empirical science and it's not just pragmatic. It's both together. And again, whoever nowadays is not looking at problems and issues and challenges in the society and individuals and all of this stuff from a very holistic perspective. So what we eat, what we think, how we feel, why, and all of these things, and also why the society is the way it is. I don't know, let's look at the UK riots. Everyone's saying it's a far-right, freaking extreme movement, but nobody is actually talking about what actually caused it. It was the death of 3 children in a very pointless stabbing on the streets. So that's what's triggered the riots. Do I agree with any of these sides? Definitely not. It's not going to solve any problems. Violence doesn't lead to anything else than more trouble and less freedom for all of us. On top of that, we're all being distracted with this kind of bullshit while the United States is gearing up for war. I would honestly say most of these problems would have been solved a long time if we just spiked all the drinking water with enough of acid for everyone to wake the fuck up. That's my opinion on it. And personal experience, because it helped. And if we did it all together, it would be just one great massive party for a while, and then people would start to integrate what they experienced and see the fact that we all need to reconnect with ourselves and with nature and with just basic principles of a healthy fucking life. That's pretty much it. I was trying to make this shorter and stuff because I have some other things to do today. But at the end of the day, it's a very long and wide subject and range that we can keep talking about it for days, maybe months and years even, because there's a lot of people who actually have the experience with what I'm saying, but they're keeping quiet. They are keeping quiet to themselves. And I'm talking people in very high levels of government, business, and so forth and stuff, because it's a taboo theme, and they're afraid that if they open their mouth and speak the truth, they're going to lose their position and their jobs. Or I don't know, maybe some YouTube mega stars who are playing into the narratives just because they know that if they don't say, I mean, this new gender ideology is okay, because they know that they're going to lose their money and the jobs. Well, I don't know. I'm not afraid of losing anything, because I know that losing everything actually made me much closer to who I am and everything else, and the people and the nature. And I'm just, the closer I'm getting with all this, the happier I'm becoming. And it's really just simple to figure out. There is no right and there is no wrong for each person. Like, everyone knows what is best for them, so we should all be trying to do that. Yeah, just be a better version for yourself and stop telling others what to do. And especially when it comes to drugs, if you've never taken any and you don't know what you're talking about, please shut up. First go and try some, and then you will see. I'm not saying it's good for everyone and everyone should be doing all that kind of drugs and experimenting in all kind of sorts of ways. Far from it, actually, quite on the opposite. It should be a lot more researched in a very constructive, scientific, and a healthy manner, so that we can see what actually works, why it works, in what kind of uses and manners, and which people should be taking what in order to just get together and heal themselves, in a sense that realizing that perfectionism is killing us all, and this lack of connection and compassion for each other is definitely a suicide of the humanity in the long run. So I hope you all get it, and I hope you all stop complaining about others and judging and all this kind of stuff, and start looking back into yourselves, figuring out why, what, where, and how, and who. Yeah, these are the kind of basic questions to start figuring out what the actual fuck is going on with us and the world around, and how we can fix this. I hope you all enjoyed this video and watched it till the end, because one of those things that really recently did get me triggered is a lot of people who only read the title and then proceed to comment on the videos. So whoever's watched all of it, mwah, love you. Have a good day, everyone. Peace.